This is Debt Free in 30, where every week we take 30 minutes and talk to industry experts about debt, money, and personal finance. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
It's Halloween, so today on Debt Free in 30, we're going to spend the show telling scary stories. No, we're not going to talk about ghosts and goblins, but I have invited onto the show a number of guests to tell us scary stories from the world of debt. I've got credit counselors and bankruptcy trustees to tell stories of how collection agents try to scare people into paying money, but I've also got a collection agent on today's show to tell a scary story from his point of view. We've got a scary story about what happens when you give your best friend your bank card and your PIN, and what happens when you finance a purchase with a very high interest loan. So let's get to our first scary story about debt. We're talking about scary stories because today is Halloween, and I'm joined now by Howard Hayes, who is the trustee with Hoyes Michaelis in the Cambridge and Brantford offices. So Howard, give me a story that you've heard that you were actually involved in. I want real stories, not something you just made up. Give me an actual thing, that the story that kind of made you say, whoa, that's pretty amazing.
For sure, Doug. There's one that always comes to mind immediately that I can think of. I remember I was doing a consultation one day for a lady in my Cambridge office. She was a single mom, had a couple of kids, and her situation, it was pretty obvious that a bankruptcy was going to be an ideal solution for her. So we worked on the application form together. I sent her away. There was a couple of bits of information I needed from her before we could file. Everything was great. The next day, I heard a big commotion going on in my office, and I could hear someone outside my door using all kinds of expletives, wanting to demand to see me immediately. And so I opened my door, and there she was. This lady had come back, and the first thing out of her mouth, she said, "You never told me if I went bankrupt I was going to lose my kids." Never heard anything like that before in my life. I was pretty shocked when she said that, and obviously she was very distraught and upset. So first thing I did was asked her to come into my office and sit down. I tried to calm her down a little bit and absolutely reassured her 100% that filing a bankruptcy doesn't mean you lose your kids. I asked her where she'd got the information from. She said it was a collection agent had told her on the phone that morning that if she filed a bankruptcy to avoid repaying her debts, that she was going to lose her kids. I said that was absolutely ludicrous, of course. The collection agent apparently had told her that because she was filing a bankruptcy, that apparently the trustee reports the situation to Child Services. Child Services automatically assumes she must be a bad parent because she's not paying her debts, and therefore she came to the conclusion that that would mean that she would lose her kids.
And just so we're clear on this here, have you ever reported anyone to Child Services?
Absolutely not.
No,
we have nothing to do with Child Services.
We have no dealings with them whatsoever, so it's kind of a ludicrous thing to say.
I think the collection agent was just trying to make their commission on collecting the debt and was just trying to think of anything they could tell the lady to try and discourage her from filing the bankruptcy, which, of course, it's an absolute shame that they had to resort to that level. It's deplorable behavior, really, from the collection agencies, but it just goes to show sometimes they'll tell you anything they can think of telling you to try and persuade you to pay the debt.
And that's why when you hear a story like that, talk to someone who actually knows.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is ridiculous, and we're going to hear other stories like that today. Thanks for telling us that one, Howard.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So we heard the story from Howard about a collection agent who was lying and basically, being quite deceitful to the person who owed the money. Well, does it ever happen the other way around? Do collection agents hear stories from people they're trying to collect to that aren't perhaps dealt with the proper way? So I've asked Blair DeMarco Wetlaufer to come back here. He's been on a couple of shows with us already talking about an insider's view from the collection agents. So Blair, thank you for coming back. Have you ever had, tell me a scary story from your perspective. What do you hear?
Unfortunately, we hear a lot of hard cases from people, and we hear some pretty horrible things. Obviously, we can be calm and reasonable. We're yelled at, we're sworn at, because we're not delivering exactly
You're the bad
news.
guy.
Yeah. I've had people use their 8-year-olds to screen their phone calls. We've seen some pretty horrible stuff. But here's a good example of a scary story. At one point, I called a consumer. They owed $850 for a lease on some furniture. And we called them and said, this is a courtesy call, and you owe $850, and what would you like to do before we put this on your credit rating? And we got called every name in the book, and he hung up on us, and he called back to swear at us because he was clearly emotional about it. Mm-hmm. And obviously we couldn't work with him, so we put it on his credit bureau. And 2.5 years later, wouldn't you know it, he gives us a call. Hi, it's me. I can't get a car. And we pulled up the account, and I got the inbound call 2.5 years later. I'm like, oh, Bob, yes, you and I talked 2.5 years ago. You said some hurtful and rude things. And he said, well, can I work out a deal? I went, sure. Here's your balance with compound interest because the leasing company's been charging you 24% per annum. And at this point, the debt's 4.5 years old, and it's almost doubled. The fellow owed $1,500. And really, the scary part about this is compound interest. Now, that's the real scary thing, not me. And he asked, can we make a deal? And unfortunately, this leasing company gave us no wiggle room, no cooperation. And of course, he's calling 2.5 years later. The creditor isn't going to be reasonable or forgive interest when he's told us to go to heck in a handbasket. Yeah. And we've shared all that information with the creditor. And the poor fella had to pay $1,500 2.5 years later.
And I guess there's a few pieces to that puzzle there. In some cases, the creditor is going to say, yeah, fine, we'll waive the interest. It's been, a certain amount of time. You as the collection agent are acting on instructions from them.
Yes.
So if they say, nope, the interest clock keeps ticking, then that's the way it is. It's
Absolutely.
Not for you to decide.
And a lot of times, if the consumer can get on side with the collector, they can avoid the nastiness. I had one lady, sweet lady, she must have been 80. She came into our office every month in her walker and paid $20 a month because that's what she could afford. And when she finally came in with a box of 20s, to pay her $6,000 account saying, her older sister had died, we were able to work with the creditor and get $2,000 forgiven because she had proven to be reliable and taking an attempt to take care of that. And that isn't as common in this modern age of databases, but it's still there. So, the really scary thing is interest and consequences.
And so the moral of the story is if you're straight up, you work with someone, then you're likely to have a better outcome than if you swear a lot.
Keep your cool.
Keep your cool.
Absolutely. It's just business. Keep your cool.
It's as simple as that. Great. Thanks for telling us that story, Blair. Thank you. So there you've got two stories about debt collectors, but it's not just collection agents who can tell scary stories. Credit counselors also have lots of stories to tell, so let's let my next guest introduce herself.
So my name is Nicole Olson, and I'm a credit counselor from Financial Fitness, which is a nonprofit credit counseling agency here in Windsor, Ontario. As well, we have an office in Sarnia-Lambton.
Great. Well, thanks for being here, Nicole. And when I put out the word for scary Halloween stories or scary stories that relate to debt, you said, hey, I got all sorts of them. So let's see how many we can get to. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is tell me the stories. I'd like you to change the names of the people that you're telling us. We don't want to be disclosing any confidential information or anything here, but, give me a story. Tell me what you got.
Sure. I guess one of the most interesting stories that I've had recently is of a client named Jeremy, and his name's been changed, but he's in his 20s. His best friend was falling on hard times, so Jeremy thought, well, I'm going to help my friend out and I'll lend him some money. So instead of giving him the cash, he gave him his bank card and his PIN number, thinking that his best friend would only have access to the couple $100 that he had in his bank account. But lo and behold, a month later, Jeremy finds out that what his best friend actually did was he registered his online banking for him and then started opening up bank accounts in Jeremy's name. And all of these bank accounts, he added the overdraft. So there were 8 accounts that were added in total. And essentially, it put Jeremy in debt over $4,000 to have to pay this debt.
And so I'm just trying to figure out how this actually happens then. So he gave him his bank card and said, here's the PIN. So I understand that. If I've got your bank card and your PIN, I can go to the machine and take out money. But then he took it a step further and went online, and because I have the PIN or the card number, he could register for online banking. And apparently you can do that just online, I guess. You don't need to provide any further information. Is that how it worked?
Well, since they were best friends, he had a lot of information on Jeremy. You know, his birthday. He might have even known his social insurance number. Considering Jeremy was willing to give him his bank card and PIN number, he might not have been so protective of all of his personal information.
Gotcha.
So I think that's where the best friend got most of the information from, was from their relationship.
And because he was registering or he was setting up accounts, which is pretty easy to do online, would you like to open a new account? Here you go. It wasn't the same as trying to apply for a car loan or a mortgage or even a credit card, where there's a greater standard of review that the bank would do. It's only a small account. And you said, how many accounts did he open up?
Between 6 and 8.
Wow. But each account maybe only had a $500 overdraft on it. So the bank doesn't look too closely at a $500 overdraft. It's not like getting, like I say, a loan or a credit card or something. But when you add up a bunch of them, it ends up being a big number. So based on that story, what is the advice you would give people in that situation? If you could turn back the clock and see Jeremy 6 months ago before all this happened, what advice would you be giving him?
First and foremost, always never give out any personal information, even friends and family. If they need to borrow money, then give them the cash. Don't give them your PIN number. That's something that you really need to keep to yourself, and change it frequently. Every 6 months or so, you should be considering changing your PIN number so that if it is compromised, you're kind of mitigating all of your damages.
And so what do? Just go into the bank and change your PIN number there? Is that how it works?
Yep, you can go into the bank and they'll put your card into a reader and they'll just ask for your old PIN number, and then you put in a new PIN number, and you're good to go.
Great. So that's good advice. Keep your confidential information confidential, and if you do want to help somebody out, then fine, give them cash, because that way you're only giving them the cash that you can afford to give them. You don't have to worry about it being any greater of a number than that. So that's very good advice. So tell me another story. What other scary stories have you got?
Well, I did have a client, Rebecca. She was a single mother of 3, and she's collecting Ontario work, so she's on a very limited income, and she needed a new bed for her oldest son because he was outgrowing his. So she went to one of those easy furniture loan stores and signed up to get the furniture delivered, and she got into a payment plan. What she didn't realize is that the interest rate was around 46% interest, plus administrative fees. Her payments were really, really high. So she made the first maybe 3 or 4 payments, and then after a while she just couldn't keep up with having to buy groceries and pay the rent, so she fell behind on her payments. And now what's happening is the store is actually coming to knock on her door, like on her front porch, knocking on her door looking for payment.
Wow. And that's something we used to hear about all the time in the past. You don't hear it so much anymore because everything's done by a computer. All the lending's done by a computer. The collection person might be miles away from you. But when you're dealing with a local business like that, they've advanced the money, so they're more likely to be coming after you and actually knocking on your door. So what, in hindsight, would your advice have been to Rebecca? And again, that's not her real name, but what would your advice have been to Rebecca if you could have spoken to her before she had gone out and financed this mattress?
Yeah, if she would have come into our office, we would have sat down and done a budget with her. We would have talked about if she needed anything in the future, thinking about those periodic expenses that come up within a year. We all have them. They all happen throughout the year. And what we need to do is start setting up a plan for them. So kids, if you have children, they have a lot of periodic expenses, shoes, furniture, clothing, setting that money aside on a monthly basis so that you can pay cash for those items. Because a lot of times if you pay cash, the item is a lot cheaper than if you were to finance it. So what happens is Rebecca's now financing it at almost double or triple the cost of the item, where if she would have saved for maybe 6 months, $50 over 6 months, she would have had $300 that she could have purchased this bed with.
Yeah, because that's what we're talking about. If it's a $300 purchase, you're right. I mean, $50 a month is more than what she's paying on the loan payment now. Mm-hmm. And so we understand that, yeah, okay, I mean, I've got kids too. I understand they grow out of things, but they probably didn't grow out of their bed instantly. And even though you wanted that new bed, well, they probably could have survived for a few more months in the old one. Mm-hmm. Or, done a camp out on the floor in their sleeping bag or something or whatever. They probably like that better than sleeping in a bed, I guess. But
sometimes they do.
But you're right. It's you are much better off putting aside the $50 a month, 10, 12, $15 a week for a period of a few months, rather than being faced with having to make a loan payment of $50 or $100 a month for a much, much longer period of time. So you really have to be proactive and look at it in advance. So there was some great stories from Nicole Olson, who is a credit counselor based in Windsor. I'm going back to Windsor again for our next story. I have on the line Rebecca Martin, who is our Hoyes Michaelis trustee covering our Windsor and Leamington offices. Rebecca, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Doug.
Thanks for being here. So we're talking scary stories that have to do with money and debt. Why don't you start me off? Tell me a story.
Well, the first one I want to tell you is actually something that happened to me. Now, this was several years ago, but I was continually getting phone calls for someone with the same last name as mine. I would have collection agencies calling me up. They were threatening me. They were telling me that I was harboring this person, that I was doing everything I could to avoid it. They were assuming that I was this man, and I don't think I have a masculine voice, but they were saying that I was really this man in a disguised voice, trying to hide from them. And at the time, I was working for a bankruptcy trustee in London, so I understood a little bit about collection agencies and what they were doing. So eventually, I just started marking all these phone calls down, and I just basically told them, you call me again, I'm going to file a complaint against you. And the next time the collection agency would call me, I would tell them I'm filing a complaint. And at that point, the phone calls just stopped. But it's just to kind of show you that some of these collection agencies, they use means to try to intimidate people. And in this case with me, well, it didn't work because, one, I wasn't the person they were looking for, and two, I didn't know the money, so I wasn't going to pay something that wasn't mine.
And so what's the takeaway message there? If people are getting phone calls for a debt that they don't owe, I mean, obviously, if you're getting a phone call for a debt that you do owe, you need to deal with it. That's the collection agencies just doing their job. But if you suspect that either they've made a mistake or they're doing it deliberately and they're calling you for a debt that you don't owe, what's your advice?
Well, my advice is just to realize that people do have rights. If someone is harassing you for a debt that doesn't belong to you, find out who's calling, get their name, get their phone number, get their contact information. If they still call you after you tell them it's not your debt, then just file a complaint against the Ministry of Consumer and Commercial Relations against this company.
And obviously, the answer is no, don't go and pay them even if it's not your debt. That's obviously counterproductive. So, well, and that's obviously a scary story when people are calling you for debts that don't even belong to you. So tell me another story, perhaps that had to do with one of the clients or one of the people you've helped over the years.
Well, this one was actually a client of mine who came to see me a while ago in the Leamington office. She had lost her job, living on a credit card. So it's a story that unfortunately we've heard a lot. Got behind on her credit card bills, and they went to collection agencies. Collection agency called up her mother, who was a senior citizen in her 70s, and basically said that your daughter owes us money and she needs to pay it. And let's just call the daughter Jane. That wasn't her name, but I'm just going to make up a name so I can talk about a person. So the collection agency said, if Jane doesn't pay this money, there's going to be a police officer at your door, and we're going to take Jane to jail. Mom was really scared. She didn't want her daughter going to jail. Goes down to the bank, withdraws $5,000, wires to the credit card company, and she's really happy. Great, now I've avoided my daughter going to jail. This is fantastic. I've really helped her out. Jane comes home, sees Mom all happy. Mom says, oh, you're going to be so happy, Jane. You were about to go to jail, but I stopped it. It's like, well, what'd you do, Mom? Well, XYZ collection agency called. They said that you had to pay this money or going to jail, so I paid it. Of course, Jane is furious because there was no reason for Mom to do that. She doesn't understand why someone at the bank didn't stop Mom from taking out so much money. Nevertheless, the debt's now been paid. It's gone. And then a few months later, Jane couldn't deal with the rest of her debt. She came to see us and she filed an assignment in bankruptcy.
And so the sad part of this story, obviously, is that someone who was unsophisticated in the manners of money, the senior citizen mother in this case, kind of got scammed into making this payment that she legally didn't have to make. Obviously, it wasn't her debt and didn't have to make. So have you heard this story about you're going to go to jail if you don't pay? Have you heard that one before?
Oh, unfortunately, yeah, I have heard the comment that, yes, you don't pay your debt, you're going to jail. And even when clients come to see us, if the collection agency hasn't specifically implied that or said that, they just have this fear that if I don't pay my debt, I'm going to go to jail.
And so do people go to jail if they don't pay their debts?
No, they don't go to jail. Imagine if people didn't pay their debt, they would go to jail. Imagine how overcrowded our jails would be from people who didn't pay their debts.
Yeah, because pretty much everyone gets behind it at some point. And the way I always explain that to people is there are two different kinds of courts in Canada. There's criminal court and civil court. Criminal court is if you commit a crime, you kill somebody, you steal. Well, that's a criminal offense, and yes, you can go to jail if you're convicted of a serious criminal offense. But not paying your debts is a civil offense that goes to civil court. and the penalty isn't going to jail. The penalty would be you have your wages garnished, you have a lien put on your house, something like that. So you're not going to jail for not paying your debts. If you kill someone, yes, you're going to go to jail, but it's not paying your debts isn't something that lands you in jail. And it's a great line for a collection agent to use because it's scary. It just simply isn't true. So what's the take?
Exactly it. It scares people, right?
Yeah, and that's why they're doing it. So what's the takeaway message here then for dealing with this kind of situation if somebody is faced with it?
So I think the takeaway situation is, so if you're getting calls for a family member or a friend about the debt, just be polite on the phone, say thank you for the information, I'll pass it along, but don't let the collector intimidate you into thinking that something else is going to happen that can't happen. And it's the same thing that we mentioned with the other scary stories, is that if you owe the debt, work out a payment plan, and then just again realize that you're right. Like you mentioned, you're not going to go to jail simply because you have an outstanding balance on your visa. That's not what jail is there for.
And even if you were going to go to jail, I don't think they'd be putting you in jail in 10 seconds. It's not like going to happen by the end of the day. It's just ridiculous. So yes, if you want to help somebody out, well, that's great. If you have the money to do so, fine. Give that money to the person and let them deal with it then. But to be wiring money to somebody you don't even know, who you've just heard of, is obviously the wrong approach. So, well, those are two very good and scary stories. Thanks very much for joining me today, Rebecca. We'll take a quick break, and I will be back with the next segment right here on Debt Free in 30.
If you have debts, you need a plan, like a consumer proposal. How does it work? Give us 30 minutes and we'll show you how to work out a plan. It's that simple. No referral fees, no upfront fees, no pressure. To find out more, visit hoyes.com. That's HOYES.com, or call 310-PLAN. And let's get started.
You're listening to Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Welcome back. It's time for the 30-second recap of what we discussed today. On today's show, we heard many scary stories about debt from trustees, a credit counselor, and even a collection agent. That's the 30-second recap of what we discussed today. Of course, debt doesn't have to be scary. There are options for eliminating debt, so for full details, please go to our website at hoyes.com. That's HOYES.com for all the options to make your debt a lot less scary. Thanks for listening. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.
Thanks for listening. That was Debt Free in 30.